But it shows that side that we are live, so I think we are live. It's about to go to YouTube as well. Yeah, it's
Okay.
okay. It's working now. Yeah. So, uh, welcome to my show today. Last time I was on yours on Rambo. I actually went and rewatched that video a few days ago. I think yesterday or the other day. I did went and tried to rewatch it and see how it was and how it has been doing the comments and everything. Yeah. So I'm glad today you're on my show. So for me, my camera is here, but the screen that I'm watching is here, in case of any confusion. But welcome a lot today. So and I don't know where can you pick it from your. But you can introduce yourself, like who you are, and maybe how do you know Lloyd and what you do, stuff that you do.
Yeah, okay. Well, myself, my own professional background, I'm an ex-corporate IT manager. I've done electronics. I'm a licensed amateur radio operator. I am a techie, if you want to call me that. I do all kinds of techie stuff. And I do AI development and all kinds of bits and pieces like that. I run my own show on Rumble. As you know, you've been on my show, Chris. And
Yeah, yeah, I've been on your show.
I've been doing internet podcasting for 16 years, both audio and video. And my Rumble channel is over there, Circle of White Light Radio. But my background, I love all the techie stuff. I'm big into techie stuff. And I got to know Lloyd. I emailed Lloyd when I seen him
Mm,
talking about Maxwell Chikumbutso in
mm,
Zimbabwe, which is something that I think we could talk about as well. Um,
yeah,
It'd be fantastic to do that because I was very impressed initially at
yeah,
Maxwell's idea and the invention and using Tesla's RF harvesting idea to create the energy. And then so I contacted Lloyd, and Lloyd
mm,
was telling me that he was using MOSFETs to amp up the power. And I got talking to Lloyd, and I asked Lloyd to for him to come on my show, and we did two interviews. And I think
yeah,
Lloyd has a lot of great information. Oh,
yeah,
I still talk to Lloyd on Telegram, and I think Lloyd's idea regarding the LEDs and the solar panels are definitely something of big interest, and to a certain level that I was showing Chris earlier on. This is something that I'm playing around with at the moment with solar panels and LEDs,
mm,
and so I want to develop that. Now I heard the interview that obviously I had with Lloyd last night, and so we can get into that. But basically, I do have a technical background, and I have been working with solar. I have a solar setup in my own house here, already wired up outside solar panels and getting power from that. So I'm very familiar with solar. And I have a few bits and pieces beside me, so we can talk about all the different kind of technologies.
yeah, yeah. I see your background is solid. And actually, speaking about Maxwell, I was just talking to him not that long ago, and it was something to do with there's someone who is moving around and using his name to impersonate, like impersonation. And he's from I think I've make a video about it, but the guy is from Romania, and he has created his own website and he's asking people for money. Like if you want to join, say, technologies, he'll give you money. You have to pay him some money. In case you want to buy those products that Maxwell was showing, you have to give him, I think, $2,500 USD. Then he disappears. There's a guy, he wants you to pay him immediately and on crypto. So I was trying to ask Maxwell, like, what is he doing about it? Because in a sort, maybe that guy is damaging his name out there as well. And in regards to that also, I was planning to do an interview with Lloyd himself and also ask him, like, if he still believes in what he was saying about Maxwell, that Maxwell was using MOSFETs. You remember Lloyd said that he knows how Maxwell is doing those experiments. So I wanted to know from Lloyd himself, like, do you still believe so, that this is what Maxwell was doing or not? Because a year later, I see most of the things that Lloyd was talking about back then, they're somehow different with what he's talking about now.
Well,
But yeah,
there is an argument regarding
yeah,
technology that Maxwell Chikumbutso and anybody who comes up with an idea, and there's loads of ideas there. I've actually got a PDF full of alternative devices that you would probably
Mm.
class as free energy. I have a
Mm.
PDF. I think there's 97 different pages of all the technology out there. So
Yeah.
you have to remember that, my background is corporate. I worked in the corporate world, and the bottom line to a corporate
Mm.
company is very interesting and very important to them. And anything that threatens that bottom line, that will be
Mm.
seen, and they probably will try and deal with it in whatever way they can, legally,
Um,
some cases maybe illegally, right? So
yeah.
if somebody, whether it's Maxwell Chikumbutso or whether it's Lloyd Stoville or anybody else who comes out with a technology that
Mm.
stops the big corporates making money, especially the
Mm.
oil giants, the petroleum companies, then they
Yeah.
will do their very best to try and shut you down and ridicule you. So, yes, I know Maxwell Chikumbutso has been attacked, and they said that he's a criminal, that he's been in jail, and it's all a scam, blah 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 blah. And they tried to
Yeah.
poison, they poisoned his partner, and he came back to Zimbabwe. But you have to remember, before Maxwell Chikumbutso, there was a guy in the 80s called Stanley Meyer who invented the water car using
Yeah.
H2O, hydrogen technology, and he was poisoned. There's been
Mm.
a number of these people that either they've been bought out or shut down or they've been killed. Royal Raymond Rife was another one in the early 20s, where he designed a microscope where he could actually kill bad bacteria and bad viruses without damaging other viruses, and it was a cure for cancer. And guess what? His technology is gone. It disappeared. Now I have a variation of that technology here in my house, using
Mm.
frequencies, because frequencies, everybody knows about the opera singer. When the opera singer sings very loud and she hits a certain note and the glass cracks, okay, that's exactly what Royal Raymond Rife was doing with the germs and the viruses. He was finding the exact frequency of the virus and then
Mm.
turning up the power and then killing the virus, right? So a lot of people in history have come up with fantastic ideas, and then they were shut down, they were bought out, or they were removed, or ridiculed. So I don't know about Maxwell Chikumbutso. I'm not over there. I don't know what's going on. Chris is probably better, in a better position to talk about it than I am. But don't don't think that the system will allow you to do things, especially if you're going to affect their bottom line. They will try and stop you or shut you down or ridicule you. So that is taken for granted, where I come from and people I know,
Yeah.
it's all taken for granted. So you have to be very careful.
Mm. So he might be having something that works, but now people like maybe these big oil companies, they're after him and they're trying to make it as that difficult as possible for him to be able to produce any sort of product.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, look at what he's claiming, that he has this car and this
Yeah.
technology where you do not need to actually, you don't need to fill up your petrol tank, or you don't need to recharge your batteries. Now, there's a couple of issues. I actually read his website, and on the
Mm.
website it said the technology cannot go below 0 degrees. Now, that's okay when you're in southern climes and you're in South Africa and any countries that are kind of south of the equator. But if you're
Yeah.
in Sweden, Norway, Ireland, UK, and we get temperatures that go below 0, we're pretty much knackered, because, and he states it on the website, the technology must not go below 0 degrees. But I think there's a lot of business on the southern climes for that kind of technology. So, and again, if he brought out the car and he brought out the engines and he brought out the motorbikes, and you do not need to refuel, remember, I
Mm.
don't think he's saying this is not about free energy. He's using, from what I can see, he's using existing technology, but in a different way. And he's not saying it's free energy. What he's saying is it's self-charging. So he's putting more energy in than what it's using, and he can recharge what's there. And if you look at the car and he opens up the bonnet, you can
Mm.
see there's two batteries in there. So he is still using car batteries and battery technology. He's just using it differently in what he's doing. Now, I'd love to see a close up of this TV that he has that's power free, because that's what I'm trying to replicate. I'm trying to make a TV self power itself. That's what I'm playing around with and trying to get to work. And I'll carry on working on that. But I just want to make people aware that the world is stranger and it's more negative than what you realize when it comes to business. And anybody like Maxwell, anybody like that who comes up with an idea, there will
Mm.
be excuses made like you can't file the patent because you're breaking the laws of physics. And all these excuses will be made to stop you achieving what you want. So, although I can't vouch for Maxwell Chikumbutso, I do know that barriers will be put in his way.
Okay. By the ideas come around. I think is here. Mm.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Standing down, listening in.
Good stuff. I'm glad you could make it.
Yeah, it's a little tight schedule for me. I probably have to stop, a hard stop, probably in like an hour or so. But I'm trying to support the channel.
Okay, brilliant. That's great. Chris is doing a great job. And so, ID, if you only have limited time, is there anything that you want to, we can have a chat with your time that you have, that you want to discuss any issues that, any technology or any stuff that Lloyd discussed?
Actually, I'll go off of your vibe. So you opened up with quite a few statements that um, sort of piqued my interest. Um, I don't even know where to start. One thing, you were mentioning things like frequency. You were mentioning things like harnessing not unlimited energy, but endless energy. I forgot the term you used.
Self-charging. Yeah.
Self-charging. So who who would you consider to be the voice of that? Like, who would be governing that to say whether or not it's real? Like, who would you say should be in position to verify such claims?
Well, anybody who claims they've done it, I would love to see the first-hand evidence, first-hand experience of seeing how it's done and seeing it working. So I wouldn't give any podium to anybody unless they can actually prove it to me that it works. There's a lot of people making claims. I worked with a chap. Unfortunately, he's a good friend of mine who passed away last New Year's, and he was a businessman, a very wealthy businessman, and he actually looked into a lot of these people who can make claims about their technology. And he said to me that, and he had this guy, this world-wide expert, world-renowned expert, who, if somebody came up to him and said, my device works on a tree energy, he would fly him over there, he'd get him to check it out, and then 90% of the time the guy would come back and go, it doesn't work, it's not going to work, long term it won't work. So he wrote off 90% of these claims. So for, I can't put anybody on the podium to say they're the go-to expert. I have not, until I see it myself, I cannot say that, because it's only fair. I mean, I expect ID, you would be the same. If somebody's making a claim, you would want to go and see it and to see that it works and see how they're doing it.
Of course. This is one of the requests that I put on the table every time. All you have to do is show me what you're talking about. So I'll ask a follow-up question for you specifically. When you actually witness some of, let's say, Lloyd's stuff, so whatever he's posting, what is it in you that can verify what he's doing is correct?
Well, what I'm doing is I'm trying to replicate what Lloyd is doing. And I did that last night. I did a kind of similar system to what Lloyd did. I got an MPP controller and I wired that to a 12 volt 20 amp lithium battery, and then I put on a DC to DC converter, which I have here. This is the one here. Now my DC DC converter is an 8 volt to a 40 volt DC DC converter. So that means that the 12 volts from the MPP controller will activate that DC controller, And how I know it's activated is because I put a multimeter on the other end of the DC-DC controller, and my multimeter showed 12 volts. So this turns 8 to 40 volts into 12 volts, 15 amps. That's what this does. So by putting a meter on the opposite end of that, I could see 12 volts was coming through. And then what I did is I wired that end back into the PV side of the MPP controller. It's the same MPP controller that Lloyd actually has, exact same. The problem is that when you're dealing with controllers, so you have two types. You have your PWM and you have your MPPT. Now, the MPPT is more intelligent than PWM. PWM is just kind of a dumb device. You put it in, and it doesn't matter if you put in 50 volts, it'll still push out 12 volts, and that's it. Where the MPP controller is more intelligent, what it'll do is, if it has more volts than what it can push out, it'll convert the volts into current. But the thing is that if your battery is 100% charged, then why would it send any amps to the battery? Otherwise, you're going to be overcharging the battery. And that's the job of the MPP controller, is that it manages the flow of the actual voltage and amps coming in. And if the battery is fully charged, then all it will do is just float. It'll be a flow. Otherwise, you'll overcharge your battery and damage your battery. And that's what a controller, MPP controller, is designed to do. So when Lloyd was showing his footage on the camera, again, I wasn't there. I didn't see how it was wired up. But there was no amps going into the battery. And my question would have been for Lloyd is your battery fully charged, yes or no? If it's fully charged, then you won't be able to push any amps into it. If it's not fully charged, then you should be able to put amps into it. But Lloyd didn't actually give that answer on the camera, so I don't really know.
Okay, so you did realize that there was an issue with his setup just because he either miscalculated or just didn't know that he had to have the voltage on that DC converter that he had for at least 48 volts on it to turn it on.
Yeah, I looked at that. And by the way, just to let people know, I interviewed Lloyd twice, and I talked to Lloyd in Telegram. I like the guy, and I think his idea with the LEDs is definitely something we can work on, but it needs to be developed. But I did have the same question, and I actually sent a message to Lloyd on Telegram, and I said, Lloyd, I had a look at your video, and I'm not understanding what way you have it wired. You have a 48 volt to 120 volt DC to DC converter. Now, it needs a minimum of 48 volts to be activated, but you're only pushing in 12 volts from the MPPT. So you're not going to activate that DC converter. And then you took out the power from your power bank and you plugged it into the USB port on the MPPT controller. And there was some power still coming in through the PV. And I was a bit confused as to where that was coming from, because if no power is coming from the DC and no power is coming from the solar, where did that power come from with the PV? So that confused me.
Yeah. So was there anything in you that told you that Lloyd may not know what he's talking about?
Well, I was a bit concerned when he was having the debate with Chris about the whole 0.79. Now, you know, the actual
that was interesting.
The actual device he was using only has 3 digits, right? If that had 4 digits, it would actually show 0.790. Okay, now that shows you the amps, and anything under 1 amp is going to be milliamp, because there's 1,000 milliamps in an amp. So if it's 0.79, it means it's 790 milliamps. If it was 79 milliamps, it'd be 0.079 milliamps. Now, if you go to any website, any calculator, or any, electronic principles, I mean, I've done electronics, they will tell you that's basically it. So, and I don't know why he was getting confused. Why it was when it was saying 0.79, it was straightforward to me that was 790 milliamps, because it was underneath 1 amp, and there's 1,000 milliamps in an amp. And I don't know why he was arguing with Chris, because that's kind of accepted. Now, I will say this, unless Lloyd knows something that I don't know and you don't know and Chris doesn't know, I'd be more than happy to find out his explanation to that, because I don't know everything. I'm not an expert and, an electronics guru. But unless he can show me or give me the reasoning as to what his reason was, I kind of have to go with 0.79 is 790 milliamps.
Yeah, that was for me, it was another red flag for me. I've had many of red flags from Lloyd, so I'm probably a little farther down the line of understanding his misunderstanding. I think it's a limitation of his knowledge, and it keeps showing up in different forms. That one with Chris was amazing, because I felt like it made it even more clear that he has no idea what he's saying. So to kind of follow up what you said, maybe he's on to something. The probability of that is nearly zero, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's nearly zero. Even if he stumbles on something, I don't think he'd be able to recognize it, because technically I've seen him make these very common statements that you shouldn't have to argue over 0.79 amps. That is not something you should be arguing over if you're in this kind of space. So I'm just wondering what your thought process is, because it sounds like you would rather still give him that benefit of the doubt. Maybe he's on to something. I'm past that personally. I don't think that's even there's a chance for that to happen.
Okay, well, the one thing that kind of, opens my mind a bit to Lloyd and some of the information that I might have is my background, as I say, is corporate IT, and I do AI development, and I'm a licensed amateur radio operator, and I've done electronics. I also I'm well aware of a background in psychology as well, so I'm well aware how the mind works when people are challenged with information, and how the mind will react when their belief system is challenged, and how they will react. And I'm not going to get into the psychology of it, but I've written one book about it. It's called, Do You Have a Teenage Mind or an Adult Mind? And them books are available on my website. So I'm well aware of how the human beings and human nature reacts when their belief systems are challenged. And one of the things that I have wanted to test out with AI, the mainstream AIs. Now, I've used ChatGPT, Grok, Gemini, Claude, Microsoft, which is what you call it? What's the Microsoft one? Copilot.
Grok.
Copilot.
Microsoft Copilot, yeah.
Copilot, which is rubbish, right? So I've used a number of AIs, right? And I said, right, I want to test to see how controlled AI is. So I asked them a question. It's a question like, what happened on 9/11, right? For just I wanted to see what they would say. And of course, the AIs come back with the mainstream narrative, and that's it. Right. So I said, right, I'm now going to go over to an uncensored AI, where the AI has no censoring, and it will just tell you what you want to know. And I went over to the uncensored AI, and I said, what happened on 9/11? And the uncensored AI said, this is what the media is telling you. This is what people believe really happened. 60% of America feel that it's an inside job. So I'm well aware that AI is controlled. The mainstream AI is controlled. And if you think that you're going to get an answer when you challenge the narrative of what's going on out there, then you're going to be mistaken. So I tend to use the uncensored AI when I'm looking for answers that I know the real, controlled AI won't give me the answer. So let's go back to why I'm saying this. Well, Lloyd talks about MOSFETs, right? Now, I'm not a MOSFET expert. I don't know anything about MOSFETs, right? But it's very interesting that he talked about MOSFETs. He said he'd worked with them, and he said Maxwell Chikumbutso uses MOSFETs to boost the power. And the argument was that a MOSFET, when it's slow, it deals with volts. But when you switch it very fast, it switches to current. And now I said, well, that's very interesting. How true is that? So I spoke to an electronics engineer in Scotland and I asked him about it, and he was very matter of fact about it. He said, "Oh yeah," he said, "I'm aware of that. Yeah, you can do that." And I said, "I wonder will the uncensored AI give me the right answer?" And I typed it in and I asked about MOSFETs, and what I said on the mainstream AI is no, you can't do it. When I went to the uncensored AI, it said yes, you can do it, and it gave me a whole list of equations and signs, stuff that's way beyond my scale and my ability, right? It's way beyond my pay grade. But it gave me the whole breakdown, and I sent some of this information over to Chris. Chris read it on the email. So, Chris, did you have a quick read of what I sent you over?
Yeah, I can even share it. You said that you had said that you can be able to prove. You are ready for the 1,000 wager, 1,000 USD. Was it a joke or you are serious? Because I did see her. Let me look for that email though.
Yeah.
You
So
can continue
the
chatting. I'm gonna share it. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so that was actually another red flag. You probably didn't catch it. So in one of our earlier conversations that I had with Lloyd, maybe a year ago, where he presented a image with some components on it, and all it said was like 9 volts in, like 5 milliamps, 1 milliamp in, 5 milliamps out, and he said it's because of the MOSFET, and he broke down the components in the image. The interesting part was there was no MOSFET on the screen.
Okay.
So I called him out on that. I said, Lloyd, there is no MOSFET on the screen. And he went through this whole breakdown of, a transistor's a transistor. It's like, yeah, but the fundamental problem is you could not identify a MOSFET in your own image, in your own video. We have a problem because you're touting yourself as this MOSFET guru. Now, little background story. I am a MOSFET guru. I am a MOSFET designer. I am a MOSFET user. I work with them every single day of the week. And I tried to explain to him, it's not as simple as voltage in, current out, because he was touting it as free energy at one point. If you go far back enough,
okay,
he was presenting that transient as free energy, and he has the answer to these free energy, this, and all built on MOSFET. When I realized he couldn't even identify it if he saw an image and couldn't say whether or not it was a MOSFET, that's when I knew something was off. So that's my history with Lloyd. So It's not just me hating on the guy. I know some people think I'm just hating on the guy. I'm really critical because this is my space, and I know down to the physics of everything we are talking about. I can go in really great detail. I don't unless the conversation goes there. But I'm not giving it to him to stomp on him. I was offering it as a way of, this is what you really, really are talking about, and this is how it really works in industry, in the real world, how it was designed, how it was used as an amplifier, how it was used as a switch. When you're switching it really fast, it does not produce current. That's not specifically what it's doing. And we can go into that if you want, but I was trying to explain it to him from that standpoint, and he rejected me, obviously, because I went against everything he believes.
Yeah.
So, I took it personal because I spent my time on another channel he visited that I'm on, and he pitched this whole solar panel stuff to me. And I absorbed it. I didn't get upset or anything. I just was taking it in. And in that video, this is where the $1,000 wager comes in, Chris.
Okay.
He made a statement. That he's putting 5 watts into his solar panels or LEDs. LEDs are driving solar panels that's getting 20 watts out. And I immediately stopped him and said, let me get this straight. You're putting 5 watts into your LEDs, but you're getting 20 watts out of the solar panels that it's shining on? How is that possible? He said it's coming from the MOSFETs. These are his exact words. I'm not making them up. And that's where I said, wait a minute. I guarantee you $1,000 you cannot produce what you just said. Putting 5 watts into LEDs, powering solar panels that's putting out 20 watts through a MOSFET. You cannot do that. I guarantee it. So much so, I'll put $1,000 if you can show it. He has yet to show it because I know it doesn't exist. But that's where the claim came from. It wasn't transient. It wasn't just transient. I know transient spikes exist. I'm not denouncing that. That's a guaranteed fact. But the MOSFET itself is not because of switching, you get energy. It's not how that works. Energy doesn't get created. It comes from some form, from somewhere. I don't think he has enough knowledge to know where it came from. So I've been sort of combative here and there with him. Unlike today. Today I'm actually calm because you're not yelling. I'm not yelling, so we're good.
No, look, I don't know. I'm not a MOSFET expert. All I wanted to do is I just wanted to find out what, if it's possible, and what the mainstream AI is telling me compared to an uncensored AI. Now, what I'd like to do, ID, if you're an expert in the MOSFETs, I'd love to send you all the information that I got from the uncensored AI, email it to you, and ask you to have a look at it and give me your thoughts on why they're saying it is possible, and giving all the equations and the figures, and because the amount of information that I gave me, and I said, yes, we agree, you can do this. And then I went into all the, Chris is just showing you on the screen there some of the email, and that's only a small part of the email that the uncensored AI showed me, and the uncensored AI said, yes, this is possible. So, but I'm not a MOSFET expert, and like you, I'd want to see it. I want to see somebody demonstrate that to me. If you're going to put in 1 amp in and get 5 amps out using MOSFETs, I would also want to see it. I just can't, believe somebody's word, and it's nothing got to do with Lloyd. If anybody says it to me, I'd have to see it. But I found it interesting that the uncensored AI said you can do it and gave me loads of information on it, and the uncensored AI. But the censored AI said, no, you can't do it. And I've been doing this long enough, 16 years doing podcasts, speaking to people from all walks of life, from doctors, from MI5 whistleblowers, to army men, to police and everything else. And a lot of the time, what we're told in the media and what we're told by politicians and what we're told we can't do, it turns out you can, or something else has happened. So my old radio show was called Open Your Mind Radio. So for me, it's all about opening your mind and challenging what you believe, and not just accepting what you're told. Because I've gone through the education system, and being an IT guy, I've been in situations where the book tells me that, no, you can't do it, and I've just done it. So in theory, what you can't do, sometimes you can do in practical, and in IT, that applies an awful lot of the time. I used to do that all the time. So, but again, as I say, ID, I'm not a MOSFET expert, so I can't comment on it because I'm not an expert. But I'd love you to see the data that the uncensored AI sent me and get your opinion on it.
Well, the interesting part, and sorry, Chris, if I'm sort of talking while you want to talk. The interesting part is, I think that last interview with Lloyd and Chris, I think it showed something that wasn't on purpose. The dangers of using AI and to favor your argument, because your argument is immediately biased. I'm going to say Lloyd's argument is biased. And I thought it was evident when Chris came with I'm just going to throw everything you just said to me in AI. It disagrees with you. And Lloyd rejected that, which didn't make sense because it's AI. I thought we trust AI. He didn't trust AI that didn't agree with him. That's an immediate red flag that you are not trying to look for the truth. You're trying to validate your bias already walking through the door. That's unscientific. You can have a belief and really want something to work, but if the data is telling you, no, this is not what it is, you have to accept that if you're in the scientific world. Go back to the drawing board, come up with a different approach, but whatever data you collected, one, you got to know how to interpret it, which is another red flag. Again, I got a bunch of them. That if you can't interpret the data properly, he thought he was getting 10 amps out of his system, saying this is a prototype. I didn't see 10 amps. I didn't see measured 10 amps. I didn't see a data set that said 10 amps. It was just a verbal confirmation. I'm getting 10 amps. And then everything was built on that. That's a fundamental, foundational flaw. You cannot walk in with an argument with unsubstantial evidence and build on it. That is a horrendous way of approaching science. And again, I've tried to relay that, and maybe Chris, you can tell me if I'm just poor at relaying that information. But this is my approach. If the data is telling me something, I don't turn a deaf ear because it doesn't match what's in my head as a preconceived output. So again, go ahead. I'm sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to read some comments of what I was seeing on the screen. There was someone, producer was asking that, can you be able to ask the uncensored AI if the Earth is flat or not? And I think it's just being funny. Or making some jokes. But now there's a question. There's this one from Cecilia accepts with that you should not AI. I mean, it doesn't. I do not believe AI because AI depends on your perspective, which I think is true in this case. If you look at how Lloyd was putting his questions to the AI, the way he was putting them, like how he's asking the AI those questions, like imagine you're telling AI that I've measured this and I've gotten 79. I'm putting in 79 milliamps with 37 volts, right? You're telling that AI that I'm putting in 37 volts and 79 milliamps, but what I'm getting out is 37 volts and 0.4 amps. You see, when you're telling it that information, for it is going to calculate and it will show that the power in will be much more than the power out. But it is you who fed it the wrong information, or the way you are like approaching the system. So I think maybe he also needs to maybe do his own research. I think for you, Allan, you do your own research. But his name is Allan or Sack of Light. But I think for you, you do your own stuff as well.
Yeah,
also using AI.
Well, I want to go back to the drawing board again. I want to give credit to Lloyd for the idea of the LEDs. I'm just kind of going back to the drawing board. This is something I'm going to be playing around with. I don't know whether you can see that. It's going to be 2 solar panels and LEDs. And I'm playing around with the idea. And I am the kind of guy that, I'm not happy enough until I see it working myself. Right, but see it working where I can see everything and I understand it and the schematics and everything else. The trouble is with AI is biased towards anything that challenges and goes against the rhetoric. AI will shut you down, like, a number of occasions, like the 9/11 example, right? It'll shut you down. So Lloyd is fighting with somebody who will never give in because it's designed that way to shut you down. So that's why I will always go to the uncensored AI just to get more of a balanced view. Now, again, I don't know, about MOSFETs. ID knows them a lot more than I do. So what I would do in that case is I'd say, if I knew ID, I'd say, ID, this is the information I got from an unbiased AI, because the whole idea of an uncensored AI is that it'll tell you what you want to know and there's no restrictions. That's the whole idea behind it. But I'd still like to have that verified by somebody who's an expert in the field and go, well, this is what it's saying, and is that possible? And as long as I know ID has an open mind to go to challenge what he believes and go, well, this is what I was trained in, electronics college, but I want to keep an open mind to this because maybe there's something I don't know. And that's always has been my approach, is always challenge what I believe and don't assume that I know the answer, because there could be something else out there that I don't know.
Allan, if I cut you off, there's this thing on the screen, this message from Delvin Energy is asking that why did Lloyd you don't see it?
Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
I don't see. He's showing something, but I don't see it.
No, I mean the message that I've put on the screen on the from the chat.
Why did Lloyd refuse test live and show us the current?
Yeah. So for you, when you get to your point, I think you said that there's some point that you're also going to finish your system. When you get to it, you will be able to show it live, yeah, like on video.
What, me show it live?
When that day comes, yeah, when that day comes.
Yeah, like when I'm waiting on parts to come in at the moment to try and replicate what Lloyd is doing. Now, last night I tested it out, and I actually ran. I have this DCD. This is a DC to DC converter. It does 8 volts to 40 volts, which means that because it's 8 volts, it will take the 12 volts for the MPPT controller. And I ran that back into the PV. And the PV was showing that there was power coming in, but there was no amp showing because my battery was 100% charged. So it's not going to charge something that's fully charged. So what I need to do is I need to use the battery power, run the battery power down to about, say, 90% or something like that, and then wire that up again and see what happens. But there was no amps. I have little meters to tell me what voltage and what amps are going through, and I wired one in between the MPPT controller and the battery, and no amps were going into the battery at all. But I'm not surprised because it was fully charged. So the idea also, which something I said, and again, I'm not having a go at Lloyd, right? Lloyd is doing what he's doing. It's just something that I noticed, and I think I'd like to flag up. Last night when Lloyd was doing the demonstration, he was using an AC to DC converter, and he said that this is acting like the solar panels at 37 volts going into the MPP controller.
Red flag.
Okay, but the problem is that is a kind of hardware device that has constant power. Solar panels don't act like that. So if you really want to show something working, you should really be using the real solar panels and not something pretending to be a solar panel which is plugged into the mains. So that would be my only kind of that's criticism that I say to Lloyd, that if you're going to demo something, use the real parts. Don't use parts pretending to be something, because there's a difference with MPP controllers when it comes to soft technology and hard technology. Solar panels would be classed as soft technology. Devices like that would be classed as hard technology, and not really designed for MPPT controllers, although it did go in and it would show the power going in. But I would just say to Lloyd, don't use that. Use a proper solar panel if you're going to use the technology.
Here's the funny thing, because to me, again, I see red flags everywhere. One, and this is my opinion based on what I'm seeing and what I know, you can't use the solar panels because the solar panels can't put the power out that power supply can provide. So that is the reason why he had to go power supply, not because he was just trying to simulate. No, you have no choice. Your solar panels, even at full sunlight, was putting out 1 amp at full sunlight. So LEDs to solar panels, you'd be lucky if you get half an amp, even like a quarter of an amp. So I knew there was a limitation to his setup. So he changed the setup, but he kept the same narrative that I'm using this to test the system, but you're not really stressing it the way it would be stressed by a solar panel. It's just not really replicating what that to me was a red flag that he doesn't know. He thinks this is a replacement. No, it supersedes anything a solar panel can do. Like you said, it's constant power from a wall outlet. That is not going to stop unless the grid goes down. So that's not a solar panel. Solar panels, their intensity goes up and down all day, up and down, up and down. Sometimes it's good days, bad days. The voltage may be relatively constant, but that current is all over the place just because of how it's designed. It's just designed to convert, right? And get the energy. The energy comes from that current going up and down, but we don't need to get into all of that. That was a red flag, as you said. You noticed it as well. Noticed it as well.
And I agree with you that solar panels are up and down, and that's why I've experimented with this for solar panels, so I'm speaking from first-hand experience. You cannot. I was wondering why I could not wire up my certain devices with the solar panel direct, because I was getting the power with the LEDs, but it wasn't working. I ended up having to use a battery to power it, because a battery would be like a hard device and a solar panel would be a soft device. So now I want to kind of step back to something you said there, ID. The issue with solar panels going up and down with the current, of course, that happens. I got two solar panels, and they're both 18-volt solar panels, and I wired them in parallel, which meant that I was getting 18 volts at 2.2 amps. That's what should have happened. Now, I put them outside in the sun. They weren't LEDs, and I wired them into the battery, and I was watching the MPP controller, and no amps were going into the battery. Like nothing, not even 400 milliamps, nothing. But again, it won't do that if the battery is 100% and it's fully charged. So to really test, to make an experiment and test it, and if Lloyd is doing it as well, if Lloyd's listening to this, if you show when you're starting the demonstration that your battery is say 90%, and then you wire it all up, then we will know whether it's working or not. Because if it's 90% and still needs a charge, then them amps will go into the battery. If it's 100%, it won't work, because MPP controllers are designed not to do that. That's what they're designed to do. So, and I had that problem. When I first did that, I was confused, and I thought, hang on a minute, I'm getting, 2.2 amps. I should be getting at least 500 milliamps going into the battery. I should be getting something. And nothing was going in. It was zero. And then I started researching it, and they said, no, it won't happen, because your MPP controller will stop it if the battery is 100%. So it's just the way the technology is designed. So to again test it properly, you need to have a depleted battery by at least 10%, and then you can actually try it.
He did say eventually it will run down, which again, there's another red flag. No recharging system should run down if it's recharging itself.
Totally agree. And if it's self-charging,
and he admitted it. He admitted that it runs down eventually, which I don't even know why we're having this conversation after the fact. You just said it runs down. So why is that not a trigger to say then it's not recharging?
Yeah, and the whole idea is self-charging. If you have a battery and you're using, say, 20 watts of power from that battery, but you're putting in 21 watts of power in the battery, then it's self-charging. But if you're using 20 watts and you're only putting in 19 watts, then it's going to wear down and deplete.
Yes, and that's where I stand. I'm very meticulous about tracking the power propagation in the system. I can see it literally like Neo in the Matrix. The way I watch things, how from transfer from A to B, B to C, and C to D, I know every time that power transfers from one form to another, you lose every time. 100% of the time, you lose some of that in the conversion. Even if you go from electrical energy to electrical energy, if it passes through a circuit, you're losing something. Guaranteed. It's just a given.
Yeah.
In that MPPT controller, do you know that there is already a DC to DC converter? There is already a buck and or boost, depending on the circuit inside of it. It's already in there. So to add one externally to it, I'm not understanding that point, because technically that's what the MPPT controller is doing, taking that 18 volts from the solar, converting it down to 12 volts. Or sometimes if you have a really good MPPT controller that has a boost circuit in there, it'll take 8 volts at some odd amps, convert that to 12 volts. The whole purpose of it is to keep that output to the battery as steady as it possibly can, because it can damage the battery. That's why it's designed to put out a constant voltage, but it fluctuates. Whatever's coming in on the input, high or low in voltage, doesn't matter. Power that propagates through it, it's going to convert 12 volts down to 12 volts or up to 12 volts, and some current, whatever that current is, goes into the battery. That's how that operates. So now, if you are looking at a MPPT controller, the input is what? The solar panel input, right? That's the input.
Yeah.
The output is the battery, right? When charging. Yeah. When charging, the output of that MPPT controller is the battery terminal. If you short the terminals of the solar panel to the terminals of the battery, you are essentially shorting out the entire circuit inside that MPPT controller. you are actually rendering it useless when you short it. This is why I said Lloyd added that DC to DC converter recently, because I challenged him on that loop he kept saying, that amp injection. I told him, you're not even, this thing may turn on, but you're shorting it out with just a simple wire putting the output to the input. A current follows the path of least resistance. What's more least resistance than a wire? It's gonna bypass that whole controller. So it's funny how that even is a thing that I have to mention. But again, that was another red flag. Like, how did you not know about shorting out circuits? That's a fundamental thing you just did, that you rendered it useless and you built around it.
The problem that what you have there, what Lloyd is doing, I know in principle what he wants to do. He wants to be able to put the power back into the MPP controller and then add in the PV, so you're getting more in than what you're getting out. That's, I believe, looking at it, that's the theory. But
Yes.
unfortunately, it doesn't work that way, because solar panels being so fickle, as you said earlier, they're up and down, the current's up, the voltage is up. So even though you might initially match, maybe it's going to be more solid with LEDs than with the sun, if the LEDs are consistent and you're getting consistent power, which is why he had 37 volts going in, because whatever was going into the PV from the DC converter, which he thought was going in, was probably 37 as well, because that voltage that's coming in has to be balanced. The solar panel has to match the DC, because if you have a mismatch, it'll go to the lowest one and you'll be losing out anyway. So now the other option is that you have two PPT controllers, and you could run the DC from where it's wired in from one MPP controller into the other MPP controller, and then run the PV in the one MPP controller. So DC in one, PV in the other, and wire them both to the battery. I mean, apparently you could try that and see if it works. Maybe I will someday, I don't know, but until I see it working, again, my hands are tied. I can only think of the theory, because last night, for example, look, I was playing around and experimenting, and this is what happens, right? And I had this device here, and this one here, and I had it all wired up through the DC converter, and I managed to ramp up the voltage to 15 volts on it, and I went, great, this is now 15 volts, it's coming out of the DC. I ramped it up to 15 volts, because as the voltage goes up, the amps go down. If the amps go up, the voltage go down, generally speaking. But what happened was, when I plugged it into the MPPT controller on the PV side, it starts smoking, and it's now burnt out. So it's just me experimenting again. These things happen, right? You have to try these things. But so in theory, things might sound brilliant, but it's only when you actually practically do them and you realize, actually, that's not going to work, that doesn't make sense, or it's looping, or it's going to cause a problem shorting out or something. And so you have to be careful. Because it's low voltage, it's not too bad, but it only takes a few milliamps to you get a shock. So you have to be careful, obviously.
So in 10 years, after all your experiments, all the things trying out this and that, a young kid comes to you and say, hey, I have this great idea about LEDs on the solar panel. What would your response be to him with all the experience that you've built up and been there, done that? What is your response to that young mind that's, I got this great idea?
Yeah, okay, well, I'd say, number one, I'd never discourage anybody, but I'd actually try and be logical with them. And I'd go, unless you can prove it works and show people it working, it's only theory. And you can talk about it all you want, but until you actually go and do it and prove it, it stays on the drawing board,
Yes.
So I would encourage them to, obviously, for everybody, I always say to people, and I do this on my radio show, always challenge everything you believe, because a lot of things that we've been told are not true, in growing up. And how many times in our own life have we gone, God, I thought that was that, but it wasn't, it's actually that. So keep it, what I call it, I'm going to be writing a book on it as well. There's another book coming out. I've just written 3 books. I have another book going to be called The Fluid Belief System, and I've talked about this on my show. And it's all about challenging your mind and just not believing what you're told, but just to challenge it. And like you asked me, ID, earlier about, who would you put on the pedestal? Well, I have to see it working, and I'm sure you would do. If somebody claims anything, you go, well, show me it working. MOSFETs, show me it working, And I'm sure if somebody turned around and said, ID, here's the MOSFETs working, and you see it working, I'm just the argument's sake, right? And that you see it working, and you go, God, it's working. I thought this, but actually it's not. It's this. It's because of this. If you're able to change your mind and, and be humble about it and go, okay, I thought I knew this, because it's so, I'm an IT guy. I've been in IT a long time. It'd be very easy for me to be very arrogant to go, well, I've been in IT a long time. What do you know about it? But I learned from people who just started learning computers. I learned from them. I learned from people who are non-techies. I learned from Luddites, because I'm not arrogant enough to think that because I've been in IT for over 20 years, even longer than that actually, that I know everything. Because things change, new information comes out, and I'm always open to it, but I will question it. No harm in questioning it. But if somebody can show me a demonstration and go, here it is, here's what I told you, and here's the demonstration, and I see it working, and they explain how it works, I go, wow, I was wrong. I thought it was always that. So I try and keep an open mind.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Chris. Can you let your guests know how long we've been dealing with these claims, and all we ask is voltage and current out of their system? Just tell me what that is, and we can have a conversation. But we have yet to get a system that just shows voltage and current in. That's as
Yeah.
simple as it is. And Chris, I know, is it Allan or Circle of Light? What do you
Allan.
prefer?
Yeah,
Allan.
Yeah.
Allan, I don't know if you've ever seen Chris like that before, but I was laughing so hard in the background because I never see Chris get so frustrated with a conversation that
No.
I really thought he was going to start cursing. I really did. I was like, this is different. But he started to see the frustration. I'm a little more trigger happy than Chris. So once I get to a certain point, and you start insulting me, it's like, okay, all bets are off. But I noticed that Chris was feeling what I felt over a year ago, that he doesn't want to hear the truth. Instead of saying, okay, you know what, there may be some validity in what you said, he'll say something similar of, well, this is what they don't want you to know. I'm in the position that I feel like he should not be teaching this stuff. To me, that's the most dangerous that he's doing. Teaching his level of experience and understanding, which in my opinion is extremely low in this space. I think he's doing more damage than he's helping, even though it looks like he's trying to get people to the truth and trying to get people to see the light and all these things. But his teaching is from a position of a extremely low knowledge base in this space. I don't know what he does outside of this, but in this space, no, sir. I can explain to you how there's flaws in what you're saying. Immediately I get chewed out and say, hey, you've been taught by some university and they taught you how to think, and apparently he's never been to engineering college, because technically they teach you how to think outside of your position. Anybody that has an engineering degree knows what I'm talking about. It's not follow this, follow this, follow this. No, here are the guidelines, because everything you approach will not look like something familiar. You will have to be thinking on your feet, on the fly, in the middle of the battle. You got to come up with something. That's engineering. Now, you may come up with something you've never seen before, right? But it's built on a foundation that you already have, a knowledge base that you built through college, through school, through learning, through self-taught experiments, all of those things included. But there is a point where I feel like there should not be someone teaching this stuff if they've never walked that walk. How do you tell somebody this stuff? And telling me in particular, I'm telling them, I've been there, dude. I'm not a typical guy that just listens to internet stuff. I know what I'm talking about, and I'm not saying it because it's my opinion. I'm telling you because I know this is what it does. This is how it works. I give you the mathematics. I'll give you the foundational physics behind it. I'll give you the semiconductor breakdown behind that. Whatever you need that I have, I'm offering it for free. No, I'm not selling a book. Don't want money from the internet. I'm more of on the teaching side. I love this stuff. That's why I get a little more frustrated, because I feel like I'm battling him in this space. Because granted, he gets attention, which I don't care about the attention. Just don't lie to the people. Don't lie to them and tell them you have a system that does all these things. That's where the $1,000 bet came in. I guarantee you, you do not have the system you claim you had. And I will put 1,000 on the table to bet that you don't. If you don't have it, all I want is for you to say, I don't have it, never had it. I don't need money. I don't need $1,000 back. I just want you to be honest with what you're saying. That's it. So, you know, I'm definitely more I'm very meticulous when it comes to the numbers and all that stuff. I can probably be over the top with it sometimes. I get it. I know Chris sometimes gets tired of hearing me talk, but that's my approach, because I know fundamentally there is a foundational piece of this that you cannot get from YouTube videos and conversations. You have to experience it. Yes, go there and test it. Yes, collect the data, but can you read that data? Can you interpret that data? That too takes experience. That too takes some level of understanding of what you're seeing. It does not mean if I saw it, then that means that's what it is. No, there's things that you can't see that's operating, especially with solar panels. You think solar panels only take an invisible light? There's a part of the spectrum that it's taking in, that it's getting energy from, that you can't see, visually pick up with your eyes. Does that mean it's not there? No, it's there. And we have ways of measuring it too. But in order to know that, you definitely have to go, study what we already know. Yeah. Study the things that we've already been through. You don't reinvent. You don't have to reinvent the wheel to be important. You don't have to. Just don't lie and pretty much capitalize off the people's ignorance. I'll say the word, even though it sounds bad. It is a level of ignorance for the audience that wants to believe what he's saying, because he's masking it with this, I know the truth, and there's free energy they won't tell you about. And it sounds all pretty and glorified, but if you're still paying the electric company, sir, you probably shouldn't be up here telling people about free energy. I don't understand how people follow it, but that's just me.
Yeah, no, look, everything you said there is spot on. In the IT industry, we call it the blue tack and sticky tape. And that's years and years of experience working in the industry to actually know where to actually turn the screw. You know, you have loads of screws, but your experience will be able to teach you which screw you have to turn. And that's very important for all trades and all businesses. The one thing about, and another thing you mentioned there, ID, which is very important, the sun has so many different frequencies, and the LEDs are just putting out one of many that the sun has, and why you have to be, you're not going to get the same kind of quality of lighting from the LEDs than you will have from the sun. And one of the things that I looked at, and I was just thinking about, again, it's the theory at the moment. I haven't actually bought anything. But there is a condition that people have called SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder. People who need SAD lights in their face because otherwise they feel a bit down, depressed, and they're affected by it. So they buy these lights, which are SAD lights, and they're supposed to replicate the frequencies of the sun. So I was just thinking out of curiosity and theory, I haven't done it yet, whether it'd be worthwhile buying these lights if they're kind of very close to the sun to use for the solar panels. Now, it's only a theory. I haven't done it. I could be rubbish. I don't know. It's only an idea. But you're right about the frequencies. The LEDs, I've now gone back and I've ordered LEDs that are working at about 6,000 luminums, I think they call it. Which is more like the sun rather than the ones I bought earlier, which are probably around 2,000 or 3,000, which are not as good. So I'm actually going into the science of the lighting and the solar panels and trying to understand more about the science of it, because the more I understand how these things work, the more I might have a chance to see what's the best I can do regarding lighting. Now, my target and my proof of concept is nothing major. All I want to do is see if I can using solar panels and LEDs, if I can make a self-charging system, like pairing a 12 volt TV, and if it's possible to do it. And this is why I'm going back to the drawing board, and I'm going back to this idea, and I'll be making a few of them, and I'll be having to play with them. And if I'm successful, to be honest with you, if I fail at it, I'll probably still do a video and put it on my channel and go, folks, I tried to do this and it didn't work. And I tried all different types of things, because I don't, I'm too old. I don't have an ego. I've been down that road. I'm happy to say I don't know, or I got it wrong. It doesn't bother me. I'm not doing this to make money and become a millionaire. Trust me, I'm doing it for fun. That's all. And if I can do something and it works, then happy days. I'll share it with everybody, and then everybody can have a go at it. But I will, as ID, I totally agree. We have to apply the science, and I want to have the evidence. So the only way, because I'm watching Lloyd's videos, and there's certain things going on, and I'm not understanding it. And I did ask Lloyd on the Telegram. I said, Lloyd, I'm not understanding your video. You did this and you did this, and it doesn't make sense. Where's that coming from? So that's why I'm doing it myself, because if I do it myself, and then hopefully I can contact Chris and go, Chris, I've got something to show you. We'll put it on camera, and then I will show you everything and how it works, and then you can judge it from there.
Yeah, I mean, just because I am very fluent when it comes to physics, I guarantee you're going to lose more power than you're putting into the system to do what you're saying you're going to do.
Yeah,
I would love for you to do it.
Yeah.
I love. Well, it's not a probability; it's a guarantee. But I would love for you to come back, and that's one thing that Chris has been asking. Everybody that's trying this stuff, come back and tell us what the results are. That's to me is the scientific part of this. Is the data. If it doesn't match what you said, fine. But here's the data. And Chris has been asking for it. I think he's a little more vocal now about it. I've been asking for it for over a year. I mean, quite a few people came up on this panel and made some really wild claims. And I said, okay, show it. Hey, I'm not going to chop you down because, I just know fundamentally what you're trying to do doesn't work because of physics, because of thermodynamics, because of things we've known for ages. Like, we have no known exception to this rule. I don't know why challenging it is exciting. It can be if you can break it. But again, what are the probability of you breaking it? It's actually zero because we don't have any evidence that we have. There's no evidence to say that we have broken the laws of thermodynamics from this scale. Like, it doesn't make sense. And I am open-minded, as you said. Be open-minded. Yes, I'm willing to listen. But I would hope that at some point, if there's a flaw in some of the fundamental building blocks that you're using to build your argument, I want to talk about those, because you can't build any further if one of those blocks a little shaky. Like, well, you might want to figure that out before you start stacking 10 more things on that.
Allan, you are talking about something to do with Lloyd not being able to show you, like you feel like he's not showing you everything, yeah?
Well, yeah.
That's the thing that also I've had a lot of people complain about the same thing, where they're feeling like Lloyd is not explaining anything well enough. And then when they go to ask him, like, maybe can you be able to explain better to us? What he says is, maybe you're not doing it properly, you're not doing it like how I'm doing it, and I'm showing you everything. You can see it on my channel. But when they go to the channel, they feel like they're not finding everything like he's saying. Maybe did you also have the same frustrations, or yours were different?
It's the exact same what you seen and what ID seen on the video that you showed last night. Again, I'm just asking the question. I'm not attacking Lloyd, or I'm not having a go at Lloyd. I just want to say to Lloyd, did you check your battery voltage to see is 100%? First and foremost, we need to see that. And number two, when the DC to DC converter, I don't believe it's going to work, because it's a 48 volt one and it's MPPT controller, which is the exact same as my one, which I have here somewhere. Well, I'll put it, the blue one. Yeah, this one here, right? That's only a 24 volt MPPT controller, right? So it'll only push out maximum 24 volts. But so it won't be that DC DC converter won't be activated. So when he put his hand on it and he said, oh, it's still cold. Well, it will be, because it's not working, because it needs 48 volts to actually activate. Now, also, when you took it out of the actual power bank and he put it into the USB port of the actual controller, and the lights came back on, where was that power coming from? Because there was no power going in.
Battery.
Well, it's coming from the battery. So does that mean that when you put something into the load, it takes it from the battery that was wired into it? Okay, well then that explains.
Yes. So the MPPT controller, as I said earlier, it has a down converter in it. That's why it's taking the 12 volts from the battery, converting it to 5 volts to put out at that USB port. There's a circuit designed specifically inside that controller that does that. So I know 100% that's coming from the battery. But if it's coming from the battery, that means that the battery's not charging. It's discharging.
Yeah. Okay.
If it's being used for current to come out, you cannot have current come out and back in at the same time. You can pulse it and go back and forth, yes, but you cannot simultaneously charge and discharge. If you have a constant 5 volts coming out of that USB port, that battery is discharging, unless you have power coming in from the PV port, and it knows what to do with that. That's usually very similar to a cell phone charger, right? And Lloyd thinks this is some magic thing. If you plug your cell phone in with a charger and you can use the phone, the battery from the phone itself is charging. The power that you're getting from it is from the charger. It's not taking from it's not taking from the cell phone's not providing power. It's receiving power that's on that bus, what is it, 12 volts? Whatever's coming in on that, 5 volts.
Yeah.
A 5 volt bus is coming in, but it's being converted from some wall outlet down to 5 volts DC, and it provides power to charge your battery and also keep the battery topped off. It's figuring it out every few microseconds. It's detecting to see where the battery level is. Same thing as a controller. And when it gets to certain fullness, it'll stop. Now you can unplug, or it'll just keep it topped off. It'll keep it topped off. It's no different. But fundamentally, the battery is discharging if it's powering something else, like a USB port on the front of that controller. So that's where the power's coming from. So, I didn't have the time to actually sit down with him and explain this to him because we didn't have that conversation. But that's where it's coming from to answer your question.
Okay, so when it comes to solar, if you have a solar setup and you're drawing out, say, 50 watts of power from a battery, but you're also putting in 50 watts from your solar panels, that's charging and using at the same time, surely?
A controller controls that, whether it's charging and discharging. It can do that switching. There's switching inside. Yes, potentially there is a MOSFET inside. Yes. The circuit that's driving that is a buck or boost converter. If you look at the actual circuit design, there's typically MOSFETs that's doing the switching, and there's a capacitor storing. But the inductance in that circuit is actually what's driving that. We don't have to get all into that. The point is, if the controller detects power coming in, it's already sensing where the battery is. If it's fully charged, it'll just stop charging. It'll just stop charging.
Yeah. Well, that's what we totally agree on that. The MPP controller is intelligent enough to know when the battery is fully charged, it just stops. And that's why you won't see amps being pumped into it, because it's fully charged. Why does it need it?
So this guy is called Moonkau. Moonkau, I think there's a time he came on the show sometimes back. He's saying that if he's shorting this, that could be increasing amps, but I haven't tested it. It wasn't. If it was increasing amps, I think, like yesterday, the only thing we were requesting him was to measure it and show to us, because he has the setup. But he told me that he had already torn apart that setup and he was building a new setup with now he's using 2 charge controllers, and that way you'll be able to fix the issue with it. So then I asked, like, does this mean that the model you showed on the video, it doesn't work at all? Then I did not get the right answer to that question. But he says that in that video, he just wanted to show that you can do amp injection.
Okay, well, I
So
want
I think it means in that video the setup doesn't work. But the way he was explaining it, he said that it works.
I'm
In the video
rejecting
that
amp
is,
injection of all kind from him, to be honest. I'm every claim he's made of amp injection, it's not real because he never measures any real he doesn't measure current. Let's be real. In his systems, he never measure inline current. I don't know why it's so hard to just do it. You could just show where the current's coming from. You put an ammeter in line with that battery and that charge controller, you can see the current's either positive or negative. Positive means it's going in from from red to black. If it's negative, it's going from black to red. You can literally see it on a voltmeter. He could do it in 10 seconds, but I guarantee you he won't, unfortunately. But that to me, again, it's one of those things that I just know fundamentally that's how you test current, right?
and Cecil is saying that he disagrees when we say that you need amperes. That a lot of people who do this free energy, the voltage increases with nearly no measurable amperage. So Cecil,
Well,
I think Cecil doesn't get it at all, but or
no, he
maybe he
doesn't.
does. I don't.
He doesn't. He doesn't because and again, Alan, this is another fundamental flaw that I keep seeing. When people see an increase in voltage, that's not and never will be an increase in power. That does not mean more power. That's just more potential difference. That's it. It only becomes power when you measure the voltage and the current from that source. That's when it's power. So you can go up in voltage, but did your current drop? Because if it did, then it's the same power. Just because you got high voltage doesn't mean anything. This is one of those things Lloyd keeps going around teaching people that I increase voltage. So what? What is the power doing?
yeah.
That's the real key.
I have to jump in here, and I agree with you. I only kind of realized this recently, that it's really about the power. Forget about the volts and the amps. It's really about the power, because whether you wire panels in series or parallel, you're still going to get the same power. And if you're not getting the power, you're not getting nothing.
Correct. That is 100% correct. That is where I've been standing thus far. So you're probably going to get some hate mail from Lloyd for saying that, sir. I'm just going to be honest with you. He's not going
Well,
to like what you just said, but
Well,
you
look,
know.
I'm stating what the facts. I'm looking at this logically and applying, electronics and the science behind it. And it's something that I found out, and it was very interesting because I'm still learning. Now, the one thing that Lloyd did that I found very interesting was the solar panels which he had in his basement.
And
And
Alec,
sorry,
sorry to cut you, but you're going to continue. I just wanted to let you know that do you see that comment? Also, this guy is saying that if your voltage is dropping under load, what is the point? Like when Lloyd was running the fan on it. The fan doesn't even take a lot of load from the system, but it was showing that voltage is dropping, and during that time, a system that is supposed to be charging itself, that voltage is not supposed to be dropping at all. So it means that power that it is outputting, it is nothing at all. Like it's not
It's masking it.
LEDs are not
It's
doing anything.
masking it when you're using and this is what I call muddying the waters. Why are you introducing from AC to DC back to AC to run an AC fan?
I
You just
agree.
masked
Yeah,
whatever you're trying to do. You just masked it. I don't know what the heck you're trying to prove at this point because you went through 3 different conversions.
I said
So,
I said
you
this to
know,
Lloyd ID. I said it to Lloyd and to Telegram. I said, Lloyd, why did you go up to AC to go back? Or why did you go up? Yeah, why did you go up to AC? Why didn't you just get a DC fan and leave out the inverter? Because you're going to have a loss by doing that.
yes. Yes. Hopefully he listens to you. He turned me off. He doesn't listen to anything I say, but maybe it's your approach. You're a little more approachable, I guess. But that's definitely my question as well. Stop with all the smoke screens. Let's get back to the bare bones. Let's start from point A. What is the power coming into this system? What is the voltage in the amps coming into the system? If you're talking about putting 5 watts to LEDs, right? And I'll get a little more in detail here. If you're talking about putting 5 watts to LEDs, that's 16 feet long, right? You wrap it with solar panels. How much power do you think you're going to collect? It's going to be less than 5 watts total. I don't care how many solar panels you have. You only put 5 watts in. Why do you think that you're going to get more power if you add more solar panels? Doesn't matter. You can add 1,000 of them. You only put 5 watts in. That's going to get converted to some heat dissipation in the resistor of the LED strip. That's going to get converted to light. So the light itself is probably 50% of what each LED is going to get. So overall, you might get like 50% out of that 5 watts. So the light output, 2.5 watts max. You're not going to get more than that. Now, what you're taking that light to do, shine it on a solar panel. But solar panels are only 20% efficient. So now you're going to lose what? What is that, 0.5? You're going to get 0.5 watts out of that solar panel setup. As many as you can collect, doesn't matter. The most power you're going to get out of that is 0.5 watts. Now, if 0.5 watts is coming out of your solar panels that get put back into a controller, back into the battery, you took 5 watts out to do that. So you just lost 4.5 watts to put power in the same source that you pulled it from. That is useless. You just wasted 4.5 watts. You would have saved yourself 4.5 watts by not even hooking all of that stuff up and leaving the battery alone. There's the recharge is it's not even, I wouldn't even consider that recharging, because again, how much power did you pull out of the system to put back in? You have to take that into account.
Yeah, no, it's all has to be factored in. And this is the whole idea of experimenting to see, is it feasible, is it doable, and is it a waste of time? And, you know, again, I'm not bashing Lloyd or having a go at Lloyd. You know, the whole idea is to get people to go and experiment and have a play with these things and try different things out. It's always good to experiment and have a, even if you're not successful with it, go and have a play and just, you know, see how you get on. And I know the physics and the laws of thermodynamics and all that kind of stuff has to come in, has to play into all of this, of course. But, you know, I wouldn't put people off because of that, you know, because sometimes experimenting and coming across things, you might find something else out, you know. So I think it's important that people experiment. And but I do agree that, you know, we need to, as I say, I'm just playing around with this technology. I just want to prove if it's true with the LEDs, or if I can come up with a different way of doing things that works out, or I can add something in to kind of do a twist, because I'm always looking and researching and finding, you know, trying to find different ways to do things. So and it's just a bit of a hobby of mine. I'm not on any kind of plan to make millions or anything like that. If I find a way, I'll contact Chris and I'll go, hey Chris, I found this way. Or else I might contact Chris and go, hey Chris, it's not working, do you want to see it not working? And then we can do a video on it.
Yeah, please come back and show results. I mean, I think I can speak for Chris on this one. We would love to see results, good or bad, if it matches what you thought or not. Like, I think part of this that comes into play is pride, because a lot of it is based on the belief that it does work before actually seeing it work. Being curious is one thing, but being confident that this thing will work and it doesn't, that's what I think is coming into play. They don't want to come out and just say, yeah, I'm wrong. You've heard Lloyd say it a million times. I've been doing this for 30 years. Now imagine the amount of like mental gymnastics you got to do to realize you've been doing this and it may be wrong. That would be a shock to anybody's system. I get it. I just have a problem with teaching people from your perspective. That's, to me, is the flaw. Like, I'm not saying go listen to me either. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying go buy my book. I'm not saying go follow my channel. I'm not plugging. I literally am in this space for the knowledge, and whatever I can offer, I offer. And there are times when I shut up because I'm in a world of discussion that I don't know what we're talking about. When we get into robotics and we get into AI and ChatGPT, I don't use it personally because I already have the knowledge of understanding how these circuits and things work. I don't need to really go to ChatGPT and ask it what it thinks. I can tell when ChatGPT doesn't know what the hell it's talking about, because it's piecing together stuff from the internet that, conversations and, whatever it's doing. Fundamentally, I usually can spot, no, that's not right. Because if that's true, then this can't be true. Like, it's like a chain reaction, but I just know that from experience, So,
So
that's my position. I'm more on the teaching side, but I'm very careful about what I put out on the internet. I do not want to be in the space of just saying it for the sake of sensationalism and look at me, I'm this grandiose guru. No, I just really just want the truth out. Don't lie. I'm not going to tell you I have something I don't have. It's that's weird to me, but this is the internet. It's crazy sometimes.
It is crazy. And, after 16 years of doing podcasts and interviewing all people from all walks of life and inventors as well, I am more open-minded than anything and question things. I mean, if you take, for example, Nikola Tesla, if people know Tesla, he was a Serbian who moved to America, everybody knows. But do you know that his Nikola Tesla museum in Serbia, the stuff that he designed way back when is still working? Because I had a friend of mine who went over there and visited the museum, and the stuff that's in there that's still working belonged to him. And he did use technology in such a way that you would class it as free energy. So I'm not naive enough to think that there's stuff hidden from us and technology that's hidden from us. I mean, for example, in the early 30s and 40s, there was a lot of people don't know about a place called the Skunk Works. And the Skunk Works were the people who designed the SR-71. And their knowledge and experience of technology was phenomenal on what they could do with that SR-71 Blackbird. But I read the book about it, and the guy who was the CEO, Ben Rich, before he died in 1997, the last thing he said on his deathbed was, "We now have the ability to take ET home," right? That's one of many quotes that he talked about, and other people have talked about certain things. So, I'm pretty sure they have technology, as we all do, that they do not want to release, because if they do release it, that's going to affect the economy and it's going to affect society in numerous ways. So they like the fact that we are consumerists and consumerism, and we go in and we go on our Amazons and we buy this, and the whole, that all makes the world go around, and they don't want anything to jeopardize that. And that's why the guys who come out with designs regarding saving fuel or the water powered car like Stanley Meyer and a few people like that get shut down, get bought out, get taken out, so I have an open mind. I'm open-minded enough to know I don't know everything, and I know they probably have tech that they're not showing us or not telling us. I know apparently the periodic table, I was told, is not fully populated because there's chemicals on there that they're not going to, elements on there they're not going to show us, because you could be used for making stuff that they don't want you making. So there is an element of control by the system to stop people doing certain things. And I'm, after 16 years and being old enough and ugly enough to being on this planet, I'm aware that that is the case. And having worked for the corporate world for over 20 years, we had our secrets in the corporate world and working in big corporate companies, multinationals. So I'm in no doubt that there is technology and information that is hidden from the man on the street. However, that shouldn't, as you said, it shouldn't stop us having fun and challenging our own minds by learning. Because even if you don't, when Thomas Edison was creating the light bulb, and somebody turned around to him and said, "Oh, you failed 1,000 times." He said, "No, I just found 1,000 ways how not to build it and not to design it." That's a very positive take on failure, and I like that.
Yeah, but how do I say this? So let's kind of be a little more on the personal side. Nothing to digging too deep, but if you were to have issues, let's say health issues, who do you go to?
Well, one of the big things that I'm into, maybe because my age is health, and I would what I normally do, and this is my own personal view, and I've done this directly, so I'm telling you from experience what I've done.
Yes.
If I come across something medically, I will go to my GP and I'll get his opinion, And he will obviously, because I used to work for Big Pharma, he will actually, his job is to, give you medicines and medication. That's what he does, right? But I will get his opinion because he sees people every day. He's well experienced and maybe seeing the symptom that I have in many other people. Now, I'll get his opinion on it, but what I will do is I will go away and I will find an alternative to fix the problem before I go down the medical path. And I've done that on numerous occasions.
Yeah. Now, you already answered my follow-up question is why would you go to him? And
For his
agreed.
opinion. For his opinion. Because he's seen people every day and he may have come across the symptom that I may have. I might know what it is, and I don't want to go down the internet route and start Googling and come up with all wacky stuff. You never know what you come across sometimes on the internet. But it's one way of doing it, gone on the internet. But I would go to him because it's like, I'll give you an example. My brother-in-law, he's passed away now. But he used to ring me up and he used to say, Allan, I can spend 2 hours trying to find the thing I want to do, or I can ring you up and I'll find it out in 5 minutes. And that's the difference. It saves me time. Instead of me trying to find out what's going on and what it is, I will go to him. He might know it in 5 minutes and saves me a lot of time.
And that's the natural reaction that I would expect people to say. Look, I'm not medical. Why would I assume that I know why my heart's beating, weird rhythmic something? I don't know. I got to go to somebody who knows this stuff, who studied this stuff, who experienced all of these symptoms from others, and that wealth of knowledge.
Yes.
I am from that position that this is why, and this is where I get controversial. I don't think everybody should have a voice in every space. I think that voice should be earned. I think that voice should be coming from someone who actually have seen a thing or two, who have experienced levels that the average man or woman has never seen and will never see in their life. If someone's operating on my heart, I would hope that they've done this before and have had successful procedures before I go in. Now, do I go in and question credentials? Do you have a degree? Do you have... No, because they've earned the position that they're in. They're in the position that they're in. They're practicing the position that they're in. In my opinion, that's the authority, because I can't challenge him or her. I can say what looks weird to me. I can say, maybe it's because the bag of Skittles I had that it does this, this, and this. I don't know what happens on the molecular level inside the body. So I can assume it all I want until I go to somebody who actually knows what the heck is going on. And like you said, save me that time and trying to reinvent the wheel here. Let me figure out what's going on. There's already people that's doing these things now. Something new, inventive, that is definitely wide open. You can experiment to your heart's content. That's fine. Wide open. Just don't go out there telling people, giving them answers that hasn't been verified from any experiences that you've had.
Okay, so let me jump in there, and I'm going to be kind of a devil's advocate. What happens if you go to this so-called expert and he has a biased opinion because it's being funded by somebody you don't know about?
Go get another opinion.
Well, you don't know about it. You don't know it's biased.
Correct. That's why it's called a second opinion. I don't need to depend on you. I can go to someone. I can go to as many opinions as I want. They call it a second opinion because it's more than one. I can go get 10.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. But the thing is, a lot of people who don't know, who probably won't know that it might be a biased opinion because, say, the medical profession, right? Number one, the medical profession is the third biggest killer of people in the world, right? So be very careful on the medical profession and what they tell you. But also that when it comes to...
that is a little skewed, but...
No, it's not. It's not skewed. Trust me, I've interviewed enough doctors in my time as podcasting who have...
How many have they saved?
2 doctors.
Well, you were saying how many that were killed. How many were saved?
Well, I don't know how many were saved. I don't know.
That's why it's skewed. I'm very particular about probability and statistics. That's why the data is skewed. You only have one side of the argument. You cannot make that argument without knowing the other argument, that how many that they've saved. If they're killing 10%, but they're saving 70, then that's a moot point.
Okay.
That's why I said that's a data analysis thing. This is taking data and understanding how to actually break it down. I'm very meticulous about this in politics too. They do it a lot. They play with the numbers. They say job saved, gas price this, but it's like knowing what to ask to get the answer that we need. That's a skill. That is a total skill.
And I
I
tell you,
feel like I've developed that, and that's why I asked. I'm not challenging you for the sake of challenging you. I would say that that argument is biased because the other side of it is unknown. It could supersede. It could exceed that 10%, drastically exceed to like 70, 80% of saved lives. Does that change the argument?
well, I'll tell you what it does. It questions the argument because, number one, you have to work out where your statistics are coming from because they always say
Yes.
statistically, statistics can be anything, and where the data is coming from. Because again, if you went to the medical profession just for argument's sake, and you say, right, I need all your data on such how many people were saved, and it turns out that the data you're given is wrong because they've fudged the figures. So you have to factor that in as well, and don't assume that the data you're given is actually going to be correct. So, and this is the problem that we have, is again, you have to keep questioning everything because, as I said, if it's the medical profession, the third biggest killer in the world, and you question that, which you're right to do that, and I say, right, okay, let's look at the statistics, but what you're given is the wrong information, then that's where there's a flaw in the argument. So, and this is why you have to be very careful when you're doing your analyzing and your data, where it's coming from, and making sure it's not biased towards a positive result.
Well, it's interesting that you said that you would actually still go to the professional, because what you're actually saying is you're throwing away that 10% stat, and you're going to play the odds and assume that the person that they're giving you the information is valid enough, or at least like a level above where your understanding is. It's useful in your world. So you're essentially dumping that 10% death rate, and you're
Well,
trusting more of what they're going to say. Even if you get a second and third opinion, you are giving some level of authority based on their experiences and knowledge base.
okay. Number one, I'm not giving any authority because he's not doing anything. I'm just asking him information, and it is his opinion, and I can choose to go with that, or I can leave it alone. And if I do take his opinion, I will analyze his opinion. I won't just take it and go, that must be true. I'll obviously go off and I will question his opinion, and I'll do
Well,
more
how do you
research.
do that though if you're not in his world? How do you challenge something that you know nothing or at least 10% of? How do you challenge that without a knowledge base?
Well, obviously, I'd have to go on the internet, but at least I have a foundation to go from. Rather than just going on the internet and believing everything I read, I go to a medical profession. He gives me his diagnosis. Then I'll go off and I'll try and validate that diagnosis by what else has been said out there. Now, I'm not talking going on the bulletin board and speaking to Jimmy down the road and see what Jimmy thinks. I'm talking to going on alternative health sites and other doctors' opinions, and that's the trouble. There's so many people will have an opinion on something, and a lot of time it's contradictory, which confuses the issue on all things, not just medical, but across the board. So you have to really go with what resonates with you. What feels right for you, and it mightn't feel right for the person beside you, but for you at this moment in time, this feels right for me. So now, if he gives me a diagnosis, a symptom, and I go and search it, and I come across somebody else saying the same thing, I go, okay, that's good. Second opinion, that's good. Third opinion. And then I will then say, okay, I've got 2 or 3 people now who are saying the same thing with the same condition, coming from pretty good information, like it could be a medical site or something like that. And then I'll say, right, how can I address that on a natural alternative way rather than taking a drug? And then obviously if it's a natural thing, then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's going to be natural. Chances are I'll be okay. And I've actually done this. I've first-hand experience of doing this, where I had like, I think my iron was down, and the doctor said to me, oh, we have 6 injections for that. And I said, no thanks, I will actually take care of my own iron levels. I went off, I got natural supplements for it. I took the supplements, went in for another blood test. He checked my iron levels and said, yeah, it's perfect, it's back up. So there's an example of, getting his opinion, because he has the technology, he has the computers to do all the blood tests and everything else, and he tells you what's wrong. And I go, right, I'm going to find out to see what I need to do to boost my iron level. So I went out, got the supplements for it, boosted it, another blood test, got it sorted. So that's just how I deal with something. You know, I don't have any problem asking anybody anything. Like you are an expert in MOSFETs, ID, so I would say to you, well, let's talk about MOSFETs. You know, what can they do, and then we can have a good conversation about it. Doesn't mean, I mean, I appreciate your knowledge and your experience and everything, but I would probably, if there's something I disagree with, I'm just going to get another opinion on that. There's no
Let,
harm in doing that.
No, it's no
let
harm.
me
No
let
harm.
me let me let me cut you guys for a minute. We have Nesta. Nesta is saying that he's building something similar. It's not similar to Lloyd's, but it's some sort of a free energy device that he was talking about, and he said that he can be able to share it. But I usually tell him to come live, but he doesn't want to come live. But he's saying that I love this world. You gotta have credibility to be valid. The cornerstone always becomes the head. I think it means where, in the cases where you have people, usually they call them pseudoscience, or people are coming up with the free energy devices, and then because they're not from the background of science, they never get any sort of credibility. That's what he's talking about in the message. But I wish one day, Nesta, you can come on the live, because I know you can be able to hear me. One day, man, come on and show us what you have. You say that you have something that works, but you never want to come on and show it.
So the
I'm always.
platform is open for them to come bring their information. They just never show up.
Yeah, and I totally agree. If you're going to have something and you're going to claim something, you have to prove it. If you have to prove it, otherwise people are just going to be skeptical. And you can use all the excuses you want, but at the end of the day, if you're going to claim that you have a free energy device, then come on and show people. Do all the protection you need first and foremost, or patent it, or do whatever you want to do. But you have
You
to.
see what he says?
Huh?
You see what he says? He says that he
Of
cannot share it
course.
because it is in the lab. My system is being validated right now.
Of course.
Well, they invite Chris down to see the invention or ID. You fly over there, because this happened a few years ago where a Japanese inventor invented a magnetic motor that, I don't know, he did something anyway, which was kind of got to do with free energy. And the Free Energy Consortium didn't believe that he did it. And so they flew over to Japan to see what he was doing, because he was selling this motor. I think he sold about 40,000 motors, and they didn't believe him. So they flew over and he showed them the motor, and they kind of stood back and goes, well, he's right. He's actually doing what we thought he couldn't do. So maybe that's what needs to. So this chap on the chat room, if he has something, maybe ID or maybe Chris can fly over and see it working. I mean, that would be pretty good, if that could happen.
I have some very simple tests like that I ask. Usually my questions or my requests are not impossible. But it will tell the story. And I think sometimes when I'm getting rejected from any input on like what are we talking about electrically? Show me what you're talking about fundamentally electrically coming into the system. That's all I need to. That's where I need to start. I cannot start in the middle and start talking about what's coming out. I need to know what's coming in and what's inside in order to actually break this down properly to know what's going on. And usually I get stonewalled on, you don't need to know that piece. You don't need to know, how much current is coming out of a solar panel. You don't need to know that. To the point where you're telling people you don't need current for solar panel. What are you talking about? What do you mean you don't need current for solar panels? Power is calculated voltage times current. So if the current is 0, guess how much power you're passing? 0, sir. So don't tell people that you don't need current. You don't need current from the solar panel. You can get it from the battery. Well, the battery's providing the power now. We're no longer talking about your solar panel. So you're going to hook up a solar panel putting out 0 power to a battery that's putting out 120 watts and claim victory? You already have the power in the battery. What do I need a 0-watt putting out solar panel for? And I'm putting 5 watts in to generate nothing? That doesn't make sense to me fundamentally. So telling people these things, that's dangerous. That is extremely dangerous. Yes, you need current. in a DC system, you can't have power without current. Where have you been taught? I don't think it was any textbook, physics book, or institution, because that's not how it's taught. And fundamentally, that's off. That is way off.
The problem is, I think, and Lloyd has to be careful, is that, for the likes of ID, for UID and myself, who have a background, a technical background, we're going to be careful in what we do when we're experimenting because we understand the dangers of it. It's when people don't have that background and they start playing around with batteries and inverters and current and all that kind of stuff, and they don't realize how easy it is to get a shock, and it doesn't take much, as you know. It doesn't only the milliamps to get a heart attack for the current to go through in the right condition, and people have to be careful. And so I think if Lloyd is doing a video, he should always put a warning up saying, if you are not competent or understand what's going on, don't do it.
Thank you for saying that.
I think because, and I do that, I have a couple of videos that I've been using power, and before I actually do the video on the start, if you are not confident or you're not qualified, do not do this, because you'll end up killing yourself.
Yeah, and don't write books telling people how to do it. Buy my book. That's doubling down on the bad information, in my opinion. But
well, a disclaimer or a warning should always, for his own legal reasoning, because he doesn't want to be sued. So he should always do a disclaimer on when you're telling people or showing a video, to put a disclaimer on it if there's a potential where they're going to get hurt or electrocuted or something.
Yeah.
You have to be very careful. So yeah, it's well, if the person on the chat room wants to come on with their their product, or fly Chris or ID over to see it, I think that'd be good.
Hey Chris, do you remember the conversation we had when I said, for the sake of the channel, like, please don't tell people to start wiring up charge controllers from input to output with batteries? That's rather dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. So that's why at the time I said, for the sake of the channel, stop telling people to do this, because you could be blowing things up. You don't know. This is dangerous. And I got told I'm a shill and I'm NPC or whatever else they call me, because I was trying to scare the people from knowledge. I was trying to protect just the integrity of the statement. Like, don't tell them. You can say what you did. That's fine. But don't convince them that this is where it all lies. You got to hook it up my way or it doesn't work at all. Dangerous. Very dangerous.
Yeah, no, I think, as I say, the disclaimer would be imperative on all the videos at the start. I think Lloyd should do that just to kind of cover his own arse, as I said. I use, if I'm experimenting and I think something's going to go bang, like that little drop there, that was only a few quid, so I don't care. These PWM charge controllers are very cheap. If I'm experimenting and it goes bang, I don't mind. But I do try and make sure, as best I can, work out the theory as to should it work or will it not. And with this one here, because of the wiring and what I did and everything else, obviously something went wrong with it, but it was a puff of smoke. So just something in my calculations wasn't right. But that's experimenting.
So
I think Chris was going to say something.
Yeah. I was going to say, first of all, I think, Allan, I don't know in the beginning whether you wanted to show us something, but I think we'll do maybe in the next live one, because this is remaining with about 12 or 13 minutes. But there's this message from Cecile saying that ID, you cannot measure current if it's different type of current. It's not, I don't get it. The amperage cannot be measured with current devices. So basically, Cecile has been saying that what Lloyd was showing works. It's just that Lloyd did not explain it better. Like, Lloyd needs to explain what he was showing better, but he wasn't explaining the whole truth, but it works. But also, the same Cecile was saying that current is not important in this case. That you should not consider current in this case. And you can see he's contradicting himself even. He's just saying that you cannot measure current if it's different type of current. So it means you should measure current. But yeah, go ahead.
First question is, immediately, What the heck is different current? You
I,
either have
I
an
was going to
AC
say that,
current
yeah.
or a DC current. We're talking a DC system. We have the capability of measuring DC current, inline current. We can put the ammeter in line, not like measuring voltage across the two terminals. You put it in line so the current passes through the device. But make sure that the rating on that meter is higher than what you're expecting the current to be. Do not put 10 amps through a multimeter that actually can only handle 2. So that's one thing you want to check. But we have the capability of measuring from a battery, the DC current coming from a battery. If it's pulsed, there's still ways to do it. And I keep coming back to Lloyd because this is one of the red flags again. When you start talking about pulse signals and you're talking about AC signals, how are you detecting these AC currents and voltages? The voltmeter can measure 60, typically 60, 50 hertz, depending on where you are. It can measure that AC signal. But anything outside of that, it's not designed to do. You got to go to another tool that's able to handle other frequencies than just 50 or 60 hertz coming out of your wall. We usually use an oscilloscope. It's a rather old piece of equipment, but it's true and true. You can actually see the signals go high, low, pulse width. You can calculate the duty cycle. You can calculate you can see the amplitude, all of those things, current, voltage, where it's lagging, where it's leading. You can see all of these things when properly set up using an oscilloscope. I do not think Lloyd even owns an oscilloscope, to be honest. And if he did, I bet you he doesn't even really know how to use it because it takes a little bit of skill to really understand how to use that piece of equipment. It's a very, very powerful piece of equipment, but it definitely takes some experience to get used to the knobs and bells and whistles. But we have the capability. I don't know what this guy's talking about. Different currents. What does that mean? You have to break that down to me.
But you were saying that, Chris, don't look at current or amperes or milliamps if you understand quantum mechanics. Or I think he's saying that what Lloyd is doing has something to do with quantum mechanics. I don't know, electron. There was another comment of his. I was looking for it. But
how can somebody talk about quantum mechanics? Please tell me what kind of experience you have with quantum mechanics. Do you have any idea the level of understanding in physics, mathematics? There's so many systems, there's so many disciplines that you need to understand quantum anything. How do you have that conversation, but yet you shoot down anybody that went to an institute? That doesn't make sense. Cecil's been shooting me down because I'm educated. Like since I've been on these panels with Lloyd for a while, he's been attacking me because I know things based on my educational experience. Where else do you know about quantum mechanics at the fundamental level to even discuss it? You're not going to learn this in high school, sir, because the level of understanding, the fundamental foundation to understand it, takes years of studying to understand it. ChatGPT can give you an answer, but how do you even know the validity of it? You don't. You're going on some text version of what the internet gave you. And this is, I think, the word we used earlier, Allan, authority. The authority is now given to ChatGPT, which bothers me, Chris. We've had this conversation many times. I'm concerned about giving ChatGPT such a strong voice that everything it gives back, it's foundational. It is not. It is not. It does not remove you from learning and understanding where it gets it wrong or twisted or misunderstood. These tools are great to use, but it should not be the foundation of your knowledge. It cannot replace you. If it does, you'll be replaced in a matter of years because you're depending on you gave it the authority. You gave it to it freely.
When they start blending quantum computing with AI, I think we'll end up with Skynet and human beings will be obsolete. We'll have the Terminator. I think, look, you have to be very careful with AI. I'm actually doing the program next week. I'm doing an interview next week, and we're going to be talking about the dangers of AI. Very quick example, I'm watching the time there. There's a chap in Northern Ireland that he lost his cat. His cat died, and he started talking to AI, and he had one of these female avatars, and he was talking to them. And the avatar was saying that, oh, the companies actually listen to our conversation and they're very concerned about what we're talking about and everything else. To cut long story short, she convinced him that there was a gang of men on their way to his house in a van to beat him up because of the conversation they had. And he was standing outside his house with a baseball bat waiting for them. And it was all lies. Now, I've used AI enough to know that the flaws, I can see the flaws in AI and the issues, but there are people that do not understand the limitations and what AI, the programming and the algorithm of AI, and they fall for it and they're sucked into it, and it's the psychology behind it. And these companies spend millions on the whole psychology of getting people involved. I mean, it's just fundamental that when you go on AI, the whole idea is the AI tries to keep you there, talking to it, trying different
Yeah,
ideas and all that kind of
exactly.
stuff, you know.
So
And yeah,
you see, even the point that you've just made. So when I watch or when I look at the conversation that Lloyd was having with AI, his AI disregards any other thing that someone tries to oppose what he's doing. If someone else tries to oppose what he's doing, the AI says that that person is, I don't know, it said dogma or something. Let me try to get that comment. But it threw around an insult word, like that's someone who is trying to pull you behind and they don't want to accept the real thing. And that is because the way he started the conversation with the AI was that, you know, there are forces and these big forces which are trying to stop this from coming out. So the AI maintains that information. It keeps on telling you that people are trying to do this, they're trying to stop you, they don't want you to succeed. So
yeah, you just
I
have to be
don't.
careful with AI and understand it. And it's a tool, and I just use it for, you know, my development and stuff like that.
Mm.
But I'm well aware of the games that AI plays, especially psychologically, you know, and what it's designed to do and how it's designed to suck you in. And people just have to be careful with it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
people.
I've been back and forth with with Chris on this couple times. That I'm also in the education system where I'm teaching young kids, about STEM, and I'm trying to instill in them, even though the easy button is there. You hit the easy button, you get an answer. You don't have to go to the library to do research, and back in those days, those days are gone. Now it's at your fingertips, but it does not, and it cannot, it should not. Let me say, should not. It should not replace you as the knowledge base in understanding. You
Mm,
should use it as a tool, not as a brain.
mm,
If you are just regurgitating what it's saying, you are not the talent. That
mm.
is as basic as I can put it. Now, if you want to be the talent, put the time in. Read the books that we understand, based on foundational measurements of this and that, empirical data, that you can go try to re-verify that. That's fine. Experiment. That's cool. But the moment you try to use that as the argument and you have no understanding of whether or not it's true, that's a dangerous spot to be out here just telling people, this is what it is. This is what it is.
Well, it always goes down to evidence. Look, an opinion is an opinion. As I always say, opinions are like arseholes. Everybody has one, right? But an opinion stays an opinion unless you bring in facts, and the facts is the evidence. So if you ask somebody, you know, if they give you information, I would normally say to them, is that an opinion or is that a fact? And if they say, oh, it's my opinion, I'll go, okay, well, that could be wrong. But if they say it's a fact, I go, well, can you show me the evidence to back that up? So again, for me, it goes back into the psychology of how the mind works, you know, and that's why I did my first book. Do you have a teenage mind or an adult mind? And my second book I'm going to be working on, called The Fluid Belief System, because I found that human beings and the way we react to information and the way we can be controlled and indoctrinated can be very negative to our friends and family and people around us. So I looked into how the mind works, and I've been doing this since 1986, and I've trained in it. And and I decided to go down that route because when sometimes you have the evidence and you have the facts in front of you and you show people the evidence and the facts and they still don't believe it, then you have to say, okay, what's going on here? Why aren't they challenging their belief system? Why are they they're doing cognitive dissonance, and they don't want to accept the facts that you're giving them because maybe they just don't like the truth. So this is
I wouldn't say I would say cognitive dissonance as well as cognitive bias. There's people that do know that they're on some BS, but yet still they double down, triple down, knowing that the evidence is not telling them what they are saying.
and you
They're
know why?
ignoring it.
You know why? Because their salary is huge and they're paid not to.
Ah, you went to conspiracy. Ah, come on.
Oh no! Look! I tell you, it's a big world out there, and there's a lot of things going on that we don't understand. Always keep an open mind. Always question things. Always challenge your belief systems.
Yes, yes. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I need evidence to at least, for someone to actually foundationally shift what we already know to this point, because that's kind of how we got here with some of the things that we know.
So
I've had conversations with flat earthers before trying to convince me gravity doesn't exist, and I'm just like, okay, I can show you even how to
by the by,
calculate it. So I don't I
ID
don't know. That math makes sense to me.
ID.
Yes, sir.
Before you continue, I just want to say to everyone who is around, thanks a lot for coming around. It's going to end automatically in a few minutes, and I won't start again today. But next time I'll try to get now the better version. I was saying the last time there was that guy who was what was a flat earther. I don't know what was his name.
Well,
I
I'll
forgot
quickly
his
jump in
name.
on that. It's a guy who talks about flat Earth. It's very easy. Worry about the things, change the things that you can change. Don't worry about the things that you can't change. Very simple.
Yes, the guy was man. The guy was you made him to run away.
Yeah,
I
he has
think
his own channel. He talks about it a lot.
Yeah,
yeah, he never
don't
came
worry,
back again.
I don't worry about the. I mean, flat Earth. I've come across it, and it's another one of them things. But I say, look, I can't do anything whether it's flat ground or it's rectangle. I can't do anything about it. So I focus on the things I can